We can now bring in France 24's international affairs editor, Philip Turle, who was listening to that statement with me. Philip, nothing really surprising that came out of there, but what I thought was interesting is that the European leaders want to make it seem that they, along with Donald Trump, are on the same page going into this meeting on Friday.
I think that the feeling amongst European leaders is that if they can get Donald Trump on board, then it's a question of safety in numbers. The more they are together in this, the more they are calling for the same thing, the greater the pressure will be on Vladimir Putin, and the more success they will have in trying to negotiate some kind of ceasefire deal when Putin and Trump meet on Friday. What they have been saying is that Trump has heard our recommendations. That's what Friedrich Merz was saying. And that the US knows it's trying to negotiate peace in Ukraine, then if it is going to do that, then Kyiv has got to be present and Kyiv has got to be part of those negotiations. So, yes, an increase in sanctions on Russia is one of the points which has been brought up. The second point which has been brought up is that Ukraine has got to be part of any kind of negotiated settlement in Ukraine. It can't be just decided by the United States and Russia on Friday in Alaska, and that the Europeans have also got to play a key role moving forward with the situation in Ukraine. And one other point which I think is quite important to underline is about this military backup in Ukraine that is there to defend Ukraine's frontiers in the future. The United States has said that it doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. Russia has made it pretty clear that it is absolutely not going to accept Ukraine becoming part of NATO. What appears to be discussing now, or being discussed now, is the fact that the United States could play a role in a peacekeeping force in Ukraine to make sure that the country is in a position of security in the event of a ceasefire agreement being signed with the Russians.
Because going into these talks, we had Moscow that came out and said that the move from Europe, this diplomatic push, which we've seen for months, really, the Europeans lobbying to get a seat at the table. They're not at the table in Alaska. Ukraine is not at the table in Alaska on Friday. Moscow calling it politically and practically insignificant. But it seems that European leaders continue to sing from the same song sheet.
Well, President Macron of France was speaking just minutes before this press conference took place. He was next to the Council, the EU Council President Antonio Costa. And one of the questions he was asked by a journalist there is, well, without Europe being at the negotiating table, what hope have you got of any kind of peace deal being reached in Ukraine? And he said, look, there is nothing wrong with bilateral talks between two leaders, those two leaders being Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. It all depends on what happens as a result of those talks and moving forward afterwards. What Donald Trump has said he is going to do is he's going to call Volodymyr Zelensky, first of all, after the discussions on Friday, to let him know what has come out of that, and then secondly, be in contact with his European allies as well to let them know what's happening. And Volodymyr Zelensky has made it pretty clear that we will decide how to move forward as a group once we have got feedback from those talks on Friday. So trying to really play it down a little bit, the fact that Europe is not going to be at that table, and nor is Ukraine. But hope, I think, you can definitely tell there is hope that some kind of movement forward will be made, and that there is pressure on Donald Trump. There is a feeling that Donald Trump has changed his tune as far as Vladimir Putin is concerned over the past few months. And that maybe that will be a reason to have more hope that these discussions will prove or bear their fruit after Friday.
We have a soundbite we're going to play of the French President Emmanuel Macron speaking after that virtual conference wrapped up with the U.S. President Donald Trump. Take a listen to what he had to say.
L'échange avec le président Trump.
This discussion with President Trump has given us a better idea of his intentions for his meeting on the 15th of August and allowed us to express our expectations, and I thank him for this. Several important messages came out of this exchange. The first is that President Trump was clear that the American will is to obtain a ceasefire at this meeting in Alaska.
Était d'obtenir un cessez-le-feu à l'occasion
The second thing, which the US president was very clear on, is that the questions arising on Ukrainian territorial matters can only be negotiated and will only be negotiated by the Ukrainian president. The third thing is the link which must be maintained between any territorial concessions and security guarantees provided to Ukraine.
So there you had the French president discussing this issue of land swaps, Philip. Clearly something that is not very palatable for the Ukrainian president, but this is something that will have to be considered at some point in time when he is at the table.
It is something I think that is definitely going to be on the agenda. There's pretty little hope right now that Ukraine has got the military strength to push Russian forces out of all the areas they have conquered since 2014, including Crimea, and that to end this war, there will have to be some kind of an agreement with the Russians. The whole point here, Delano, is what is that accord going to be? What kind of an agreement will there be with the Russians? What will the security guarantees be? What will Russia agree to as far as Ukraine is concerned? We really don't know right now. And that's something that, for the moment, Vladimir Putin has always systematically refused. He has again issued a statement today, or the foreign ministry in Russia has issued a statement saying that the requests by Russia for peace in Ukraine remain the same as they have since 2023. So it looks as though, for the moment, Vladimir Putin appears to think he can gain more on the ground than he can by coming to the negotiating table. What he wants to avoid is increased sanctions. That's something we've heard a lot about during these discussions over the past hour between these European leaders, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and Donald Trump. I think that Putin is worried about increased sanctions. He's also worried about tariffs being imposed on countries buying Russian oil and Russian goods. And by coming to the negotiating table, he's achieving two things. First of all, he's being welcomed back into the international community by going to a foreign country and meeting the US president when he's been depicted
To the United States, no less.
Yeah, in the United States, and to a former Russian-held colony in the United States. And secondly, he will try to negotiate behind the scenes no tariffs being imposed on the Russians, and also the fact that there are no more sanctions imposed on Russia, even though the European Union and Europe have imposed many sanctions on the Russians.
Who knows? He may also ask for the sanctions that the US has slapped on Moscow to be gradually lifted.
That is more than likely as well.
Exactly.
Vladimir Putin will ask for that.
And we're actually getting information from the French President Emmanuel Macron that Donald Trump would also fight for a trilateral meeting between both Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, which could possibly be taking place in Europe. But we can see where things end up on Friday. Philip, thank you very much for that. Philip Turle there.